So Paul, at 74 years old, 13, 14 years of professional football, how are you feeling mentally and physically?
As much as I know, and I've got my fingers crossed that physically, certainly I don't have any injuries that I sustained in football that have a lingering effect. I had a few injuries during the course of my 13-year career, a couple of broken bones. Bones have a way of healing perfectly for the most part, and I've never had any injuries to my cervical spine, lower spine. I was fortunate in that respect, or any of the articulating surfaces, knee and hip joints. Of course, there's a lot of attention being paid to CTE these days. And again, that's why I say, hopefully my fingers are crossed. Football is a great game, and it's been a great game in this society for years and years. What we have come to learn in recent years is the fact that there can be negative effects with regard to head trauma. Of course, being able to determine whether the impact of CTE has occurred, for the most part, to validate it, only occurs after death.
What kind of conflicting emotions do you have about a game that you love, but now you're aware that it can impact the health of one's brain?
Well, I think that certainly the sport, whether it's played at the amateur level today or certainly as high as the professional level, that those who are in charge want to make it as safe as humanly possible. Now, decisions, of course, for young men and young boys who perhaps may be interested in play, I think that certainly comes in at the parental level. Thing that I would advise is always make sure, if you're a parent, who's in charge of that program, what their credentials are with regard to coaching, and what their credentials are with regard to teaching technique, and before making that decision to allow their youngsters to participate.
What was it about your style of play that might have helped you maintain your health throughout the years?
Well, what I commonly like to say is that I had a knack for staying out of the way of the big guys. But once one plays the game over a few years, I think he understands where the hot spots are on the field and tries to avoid them as much as possible.
So you're not going to give yourself much credit then?
Well, as I said, I learned to stay out of the way of the big guys.
When you watch highlights of you, you're completely separate from everybody else, leaving everybody in the dust.
Well, space helps again, and again, when I was involved in catching the football, it was in space. If I owe anything, I was criticized to a certain extent for appearing to jump when I caught the football in certain instances, but that was pre-planned. Pre-planned to this extent. Sometimes I would have to concentrate in going inside to the middle of the field. If the ball was thrown late, I did not want my cleats to be planted or be in a running motion. I wanted to, at that instance when I would be hit, to be in the air with my feet not on the ground, because I would take the full extent of a blow if my feet were planted on the ground, and if it was then in the lower portion of my body, the inferior portion of my body, from the hips down and certainly in the knees, then I would be in a position of risk to real damage to my knees in terms of torn cartilage perhaps, or torn ligaments. Usually I'd be hit, but I would be in the air, so some of the explosiveness of the hit would be dissipated. And so I thought it was a measure that helped me instead of hurt me. Others thought that, well, you're jumping for the ball, you don't need to jump for the football.